her athletes, and she's going to be doing some Q&A as well, so take the floor.
Thanks. And so, like Craig was saying, my name is Dr. Megan. I'm a sports psychologist with Mind of the Athlete, and we are located over towards Bethlehem by Moravian. We're right off of 22, but what we do is we work with athletes of all level. We have some high school athletes, but then collegiate, professional, Olympic. Even had a professional triathlete last October I was working with before she went over to Kona. And so we kind of run the gamut of who we work with. But we do one-on-one performance coaching, we work with teams, ultimately to develop the mental side of sport. I mean, you guys, if you're here, obviously you go here, and so you're here training and doing cycling, like you're training the body, but ultimately we need to make that consistent. Life has its ups and downs. We have competition days versus practice days, and so what we do is help athletes like yourself to make that a more consistent endeavor. And so since we are going to talk about the brain, we're going to warm your minds up a little bit beforehand, just do some mental stretching. And so, you guys might not be able to see it too clear, but raise your hand when you find the flag. There. Nice. Okay. What word do you see? Good. Let's see. Who saw good first? Who saw evil first? All right, look around, people. All right, last one. Which one is different?
The middle one.
The middle one? Okay, why is number 2 different?
Because of the eyes.
Yep, so number 2 is different because of the eyes. So your brain's a little bit more warmed up now, you're like ready for this. And so our goal at Mind of the Athlete is helping improve the emotional health and performance of athletes. The brain is a really powerful organ, and we oftentimes don't take a ton of time to learn how to make it work better and make it work for us, rather than those times that it can sometimes work against us. And so the overarching message and the overarching thing that we preach at Mind of the Athlete is clear mind, better performance. If your mind is clear of the work stuff, the family stuff, things you need to deal with your kids when you get home, when you're here practicing, or when you're out on the road racing, you are going to perform better. Same thing when you're at work. If you're able to block out all of the work stress, or not the work stress, but the family stuff, stress, upcoming race stuff, those other things going on in those different areas, be able to keep those clear, you're going to perform better at work. Same thing goes when you're hanging out and spending time with family. If you're able to clear your mind of the other stuff, you're going to be able to be more engaged and focused and really give that time to your family. And so to demonstrate a little bit of how powerful the brain is, I'm going to have Billy come up here really quick. Those of you who don't know, Billy and I went to high school together. And we swam together. And so Billy's basically going to prove that he's stronger than I am, and I'm just going to prove that our brain can overpower anything. So, put your arm out. You don't have to point, I don't know why I just went there. But put your arm out, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to try to push this down. You just stop me. So we can all see Billy is stronger than I am. That was true several years ago. And it still remains true today. And so, I'm going to see if with one finger, I'm able to take away all of his strength. Okay, so I'm going to try to hit a couple different points, and you just keep this up there and try to prevent me from putting it down. So I'm going to try over here. Nope, doesn't work. I'm going to try up top. Nope, doesn't work. I'm going to try one more spot. Got it. All of a sudden, our brain, I'm now in his line of vision, our brain's focusing on one more thing, and it just can't balance everything. I think you maybe let me do a little bit too. Tiny bit. But you can say, okay, we're going to do this one more time. So you guys try this amongst yourselves. Can you take the person sitting next to you's power away just with one finger? Those of you guys that want to try it? Or you guys are not interested in trying this? Okay, they'll try it.
Oh, yeah, columns. Wait, so you said first on the side?
Yeah.
Alright, and then you said first on the top?
That's a big one.
I think the weakness is going to come.
Yeah. So our brain's focusing on too many things. So, we're going to try this again. So, Frankenstein me. We'll face this way so they can see you. And so, I'm going to try to push your arms down, same situation. You prevent me from doing so. So while I'm pushing your arms down, I want you to picture in your mind or think about a person that was a super positive, great, amazing influence to you this last year. They're such an awesome human being. They're so cool. I cannot take your strength away. So now, same thing. Think about a situation that stressed you out or that you hated, or a person at work that's just an awful coworker and they just really drain you.
Yeah.
Our brain, thank you very much for being so strong. So when we have positive stuff going on up here, like we're good, we can balance everything, but then when we have that stress, that anxiety, those negative thoughts, that negative self-talk, well, guess what? Our strength can be taken away pretty easily. Fun little trick you guys can try with your friends. And same thing works with lying. And so if I would have been like, Billy, think about a name that's anything other than your name, same thing would happen. So our brain gets overworked. When it gets overworked, it doesn't function as well, and then we can't go out and maintain the strength that we have, the mental endurance, the physical energy, all that stuff. And so we are going to learn tonight a little about the pre-conscious mind and how to make it work best. Because what we know is sports, as athletes in here, but then also more than sports, life. Life is emotional. I'm sure you guys can all think of times through racing, through training, or even out in your life outside of the gym where things are great. Emotionally, you were up here, things were good, times were wonderful. But then we also have times where the emotions are more down here. And things aren't so great, things aren't clicking as well. And so the message that we get, and it's pretty widespread in our culture, to deal with and cope with these emotions that we have, both positive and negative, is something like this.
Which team do you play for?
Well, I'm a peach.
Well, I was just wondering, because I couldn't figure out why you would throw home when we got a 2-run lead. You let the tying run get on second, and we lost the lead because of you. Now you start using your head. That's not love. That's 3 feet of fucking. Are you crying?
No.
Are you crying? Are you crying? There's no crying. There's no crying in baseball.
Why don't you leave her alone, Jimmy?
Oh, you think it, Doris? Roger Swordsman was my manager, and he called me a cock and violent. That was when my parents drove all the way down from Michigan to see me play the game. And did I cry? No! No! And you know why?
No.
Because there's no crying in this. There's no crying in baseball. No crying.
Happy, Jimmy?
What? She's crying, sir.
I didn't mean to do that.
So there's no crying in baseball, just suck it up, push through it. There's no crying in cycling or running or swimming. Like, I don't want to hear about it. Just get back to work, get back to your training, get back to whatever you were doing. But I don't care if you were up here or down here. You need to show up with the same attitude, the same performance. Just, I don't care what's going on. Just get through it. And so that's the message that oftentimes we sort of get sent. And are there times that we do have to suck it up and we do just kind of have to get through it and push through it? 100%. However, if that is the only strategy that's our go-to, if that's the only thing that we know and that we implement to do, just like if you guys would come in here and only got on the bike, when you went to go compete in a try, like you're clearly limiting your overall potential if you're only training one thing. And so that's what we do, is ultimately to help athletes and people develop some more strategies to get through some of that stuff. And so why are we hearing about this more and more? Sports psychology, but also psychology and mental health in general. A couple reasons. Our culture has changed. If any of you guys have kids or maybe some grandkids or nieces, nephews, there is no off season anymore. There is no, hey, let's take a break, let's go on vacation, even in work. I feel like if I take off, someone might replace me, or I have to do so much work before I go on vacation to get ready for vacation that it's not even worth going on vacation. We don't take breaks, we don't take time anymore. And so there's some research that's done. A lot of it's done on college campuses because they're a lot easier to measure. They're just kind of there. Their parents don't have to sign off on it. It's just a whole really good mix of a population all in one place. And so although these numbers are with college students, the last one I'm going to say is with more of an 18 plus, just the general population. People aren't showing up on a college campus and all of a sudden getting anxious or getting depressed. The day that they graduate, they're not all of a sudden cured. And so we can extrapolate these numbers and apply it to high school, and then also more of the adult population as well. And so this was published in the American Psychological Association Monitor. It's looking throughout the years, why are students showing up at college counseling centers? And I think you guys may relate to some of these three reasons as well. And so the first one is relationships. So the people we date, our family, our friends, they stress us out, but they're doing it at a really consistent level over time. Depression is on the rise. Anxiety is literally shooting off the chart. The more current statistics actually have it like literally off of this chart. The new numbers for college students is in 2016, the National College Health Assessment, 58.4% are saying, yeah, I got overwhelming anxiety. This is up from in 2015, it was 57%, in 2013, it was 51%. So since 2013, it's jumped from 51 to 58, almost 59%, and that is a huge rise. Anything. Depression, similar trend. Right now, it's 36.7% of college students are saying, yep, we're hurting, feeling depressed, and it's steadily increasing. Back in 2013, it was only down at about 31%. And so that's college students. What about all of us, just typical Americans walking around? From what they can gather, now this is not including your substance use and substance abuse. This is not including people that have been hospitalized. This is not including people who's in prisons. And so we're taking out those outliers. 18% of Americans 18 or older have said or reported like, yes, some mental health things going on, we need some help. And so it's something that it's around all of us. The NCAA is one of the first big governing bodies to actually really take a stance and mandate these things. It's the #1 health and safety concern. If any of you guys do have college students or college student athletes, grandkids, #1 health and safety concern throughout the NCAA, Division 1 through 3, is mental and emotional health. And so this past January 2016, the NCAA released guidelines of, hey, schools, we don't care how you do it, here are some guidelines, but you need to figure it out and have these resources out for them. Because what we're seeing is these kids are hurting, and when they're graduating and in adulthood, like we still have it, but we're also not really taught how to deal with this stuff. It's still that suck it up, push through it culture, and so we're gonna learn a little bit of, all right, we got stress, we got things, how can we make our mind work in a different way? How can we optimize its performance so we are able to get through our days and our lives a lot easier? And so who is the guy, the gentleman on the left? Muhammad Ali. And what he said was his matches were not won or lost in the ring. They were won or lost when he was out by himself on a training run at like 5 in the morning, no one else around. The woman on the right is significantly lesser known, but her name is Sharon Woods. She's the first female in North America to have ever climbed Mount Everest. Pretty big deal. And what she said was, it's not the limits in our physical training, it's not the environmental barriers that ultimately block us from achieving our potential, it's our mental barriers. And so 2 incredibly elite athletes saying, it's the 6 inches between your ears, doesn't matter how much training you're doing, but it all comes down to that. So, what historical event / movie?
The sinking of the Titanic.
The sinking of the Titanic. Why does this boat go down?
Because of an iceberg which hits the middle rear of the ship, which causes it to flow at least 20 miles per hour, including with a G-force of 2 Gs, making it
So much
sink in 2+ hours with over 1,118 people still on board with sinking children.
I may need to take you with me to spit some Titanic facts. And so, did you know? Did you know? Did you know that they saw the ice?
Yes, I do know. They're like, why was even Mr. Smith going at like over 25 knots into the blinking of the ice field?
So fast. And so, they saw the ice. They knew they were going to hit something. So why did they turn the boat? Well, they only thought it was a floating piece of ice. But by the time they realized it was actually a glacier, and the structure of a glacier is we can only see 10% above the water and the 90% is down below. By the time they realized it, it was too late for them to change course of direction, and boom, just like this gentleman said, the ship went down. And so that breakup of 10% above the water of what we're actually aware of and can see, that is how our mind operates. 10% is our conscious awareness. The other 90%, we are unaware. It's going on and it's working and it's doing things. And so our conscious awareness is what we are aware of at any given moment. So it's seeing the pictures, hearing loud here, like being aware of the people next to us. That's only 10% of what our brain is doing at any given time. I'm going to get to the other 90% in a minute, but I want to call your attention to the waterline. Those are our psychological defenses. How many of you have like a fence or a gate in your backyard? Most people. So why do we have those? Keep the dogs in. Yeah. Keep the dogs in, keep the other people's dogs out, right? And so our psychological defenses are like the fence or the gate in your backyard, which is responsible for keeping the riffraff out. It's keeping that lower 90% down where it belongs so you can get through your day, get the kids to school, get to work, get through a workout, do all the things that you need to do without the 90% interrupting and bothering you. And so, we are going to now talk about that lower 90% of the iceberg and what breaks that up. Before I kind of dive into the bottom up, I want to call your attention to these little red dots. They are all over our brain, not like literally, but these are visual representations of stressful experiences. They can be stressful in a positive way, and so you think about, when you first start dating your partner, maybe you're first getting married or having kids, you have a vacation coming up, like these exciting things. Positive stressors. They can also be stressors in a negative way. But either way, they're the dots, red dots. We're going to kind of get to why they can be a problem. But first, I want to start from the bottom up, like I said. So the deepest, darkest depths, bottom of the glacier is our unconscious mind. The memories and the red dots stored here are so outdated, they are not helping you get through work today or helping you thrive. They're not very impactful on who you are today. And so things that are stored down there are things like, what did you do on your 3rd birthday? Anyone here honestly say what they did on their 3rd birthday? Probably, right? And so, like we don't remember that. What we did on our 3rd birthday or what kind of, it's not going to be helpful for you to meet a certain deadline at work today. And so, these things are stored all the way at the bottom. People that have had some significant traumas, those dots are typically at times can be pushed all the way down here as well. The middle layer, or the next level up, is our X-conscious. This is sort of like the cream of the Oreo. And so things in our X-conscious mind are more recent, more impactful memories, things that are helping us do what we need to do today. They're more shaping on who we are. And so something that might be in this area is, what did you do on your 21st birthday? Take a moment. Anybody remember their 21st birthday? Right? Maybe we don't remember it for different reasons. But so things like what happened in our 21st birthday. This area is like our brain's filing cabinet. So it was like, oh, 21st birthday, let me see. Went through the file, picked it up, threw the dot up, and just went, whoop, oh yeah, I remember what I did on my 21st birthday, and maybe if you don't remember it now, it might come to you a little bit later, but then when you're done, it's like, okay, back into the filing cabinet, pushed in the drawer, now we're waiting for the next thing that you want me to remember. And so this area, as far as athletic ability and work and those things are very important. Our brain's ability to access this and remember certain things of, hey, when I race, this is what I do, or I did this drill once, and this is when I'm in this situation, this is how I execute something. Our brain's ability to grab some memories down here, super, super, super helpful. And so much more shaping, much more impactful, much more helpful for today. This box right below the waterline is what we're gonna focus on the most. Since it's right below the waterline, these dots are the easiest ones to get at. And so have any of you ever had the experience that you're trying to get to bed at night, or maybe you're driving on your way home from work, and all of a sudden, some thought pops into your head, and you're like, where did this come from? I haven't even been around that person today. I haven't even been in this environment. Where is this coming from? Have you guys ever had that experience of kind of being sidelined by a thought? This is the area that came from. The stressors and the dots in this area are current and ongoing stressors or situations or things that we have to finish, have to complete, are on our mind, are bothering us. And so one might be, okay, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? And if I'm going away this weekend, what things am I going to miss for work? And then there was this weird conversation that I had with my sister, and I think she's kind of upset with me, and I have to watch her kids this weekend. How's that going to go? And then I have to make sure that my kids' laundry is packed because they have a science thing tomorrow, and it's like they're going away on a trip, and then, oh, that's right, I need to pick up my dry cleaning, and oh, I need to, like, it's all of these little things that throughout a day, we need to do. It's almost like that back, if you're cooking dinner, the back burner on your stove, where you just kind of have stuff. You know you need to deal with it, but you're not actively cooking or like doing something to it right now, but you can't leave it on the burner or it's going to be a problem. That is this area. And so that's why whenever we talk, I'm at the end, we're constantly saying, hey, clearer mind, better performance. If this area, that area right below the water line is clearer, not as many dots, you are going to have much more energy, you're going to be able to be productive, you're going to be able to focus, like your brain just has room and ability to have that fence in tip-top shape because it's not working super hard, you're going through your day without getting distracted, like your energy-wise, like things are good. However, what happens more often is this area gets flooded. I don't know about you, but in this area, my parents, their basement used to flood. Problem. Water, too much, I mean, no, not good. Flooded in any sense of the word is like not really typically a good thing. And so when our mind gets flooded, we have too many red dots, we have too many stressors, we have too many things that we're trying to kind of keep in order. And by the way, this doesn't have to be like, oh, I need to remember to do this today. This could be something that your coach or a coworker said to you like 3 months ago, and it still bothers you. It just comes up and you think about it every once in a while. It just doesn't sit well with you. Our brain does not have a linear sense of time. So just because it's not happening today or tomorrow doesn't mean it's automatically gone from this area. And so what happens when this area gets flooded is we regress. Under stress, we regress and move backwards in our ability to tolerate, cope with, deal with, get through, balance, manage any of those red dots. And so even if it's the smallest little thing, we're going to have a really big reaction to it because our brain is trying to balance and manage so many things that it literally just can't anymore. And so when this happens, our mind gets flooded, certain things start to happen, and we call these the 5 hurdles. And so some people have experienced like all 5 of these at one time. Sometimes it's just 1 or 2. So we're going to see if you guys have ever experienced any of the 5 hurdles. So if any of you ever had a hard time getting to sleep at night, or you wake up in the middle of the night and thoughts are racing through your head and you have a really hard time getting back to sleep. Right? Our brain gets flooded, it impacts our sleep. How about some anxiety? Anybody ever get some nerves over things at work or at school or training, right? Energy level. This one is interesting. You don't even know what this is yet. Have you ever gone to bed and you've got like 8 or 9 hours of sleep, like you got good sleep,
But you felt tired.
exhausted? Has that ever happened to you?
It's happened to me for the past remaining 2 weeks.
Past 2 weeks. See, it happens. We have so many red dots. Your brain is working really hard to keep it together, and it's expelling a lot of energy. You know, you come into a gym, it's like, well, duh, I'm more tired at the end of a workout, like physically tired, that makes sense. Well, this is something we can't physically see. And so when we have so many things that our brain is trying to keep in order, it's exhausting. We're exerting a lot of mental effort and energy that we don't necessarily realize, and it's draining our energy. The 4th thing is misguided tensions. And so maybe in a heated discussion with your partner or your parents or a coworker, you say something that the moment you say it, you know you should not have said that. And it's just this like flood of emotions came over and it just flew out of your mouth and you're like, and you just know you're gonna get, like, you know you're gonna have to deal with it and you're gonna hear about it for the next 25 minutes. So we say things we know we shouldn't say. We maybe get aggressive and like, an elbow here or there, like we're playing some basketball, or like, you know, just, like punch a pillow or something. So we say things we shouldn't say, we get a little bit aggressive when we shouldn't get aggressive, we maybe have that last drink when like, we really don't need it, like we're good, or maybe we hook up with that person that like, not a good idea. We see a lot of professional athletes and celebrities have very public falls from grace because they're choosing to outlet their tensions in a not very positive way. And so we have misguided tensions. The last thing is loneliness, and this one's really interesting. I don't know if we call it a phone thing or a tech thing, and we're so used to just this thing now, but the amount of athletes that I'll have, I mean, I'm talking like 20, 21-year-old kids, that when I'm like, all right, who do you talk to actually about your stuff? Like if you have a problem, who's your people? Who do you talk to? And they're like, no one. That's a huge problem. And so if you're sitting here and you're like, who would I actually talk to? And I actually don't know. That's a problem. You need to like have your people. But the amount of people that once we start getting stressed, we have all these things going on, now we're not sleeping well, we're anxious, we typically start to isolate from people. And so sometimes loneliness can be something that happens when we're just so overwhelmed. And so all of these things are going on in our head. We have tons of dots. Now we're not sleeping well, we're getting stressed, we feel exhausted all the time, we're maybe mouthing off to our partners and now having more issues at home, causing more red dots. And so that nice fence that was like keeping things together, just like every other muscle in our body, it gets tired and it starts to break down. And so when this starts to break down, all of a sudden, these dots, they're not staying in that area very nice. They're coming up and in the middle of the day at work or in the middle of hanging out with friends or in a workout, all of these dots we are now less focused, have less attention. And so these psychological defenses can break down with periods of flooded mind over time, but then we have periods of intense stress. And so maybe it's deadlines at work, maybe April 15th is typically a stressful day for a lot of people, or like that whole like tax season situation. We have lots of this in life. We have periods of more intense stress, periods of less intense stress. The periods of more intense stress can really break those psychological defenses down a lot quicker. So can alcohol. I am sure each and every one of you, maybe, might know that person, or maybe we have some in this room, where after you have like 1, 2, dare I say 3 or 4 drinks, all of a sudden, they just start crying. The drunk criers of the world, the people that like, once we like, they start drinking, all of a sudden the psychological defenses wash away, and now like, things are coming up, versus those people that are typically very quiet and then go out and they're the loudest person all of a sudden in a room. When you see that, you're literally watching people's psychological defenses just wash away. And so when our psychological defenses are not intact, we are now in a bad position. Those dots that were kept in order are now coming up, distracting us throughout our day, taking our attention. We're not able to really focus and invest our energy fully on things because we're distracted. Then something fun, which we don't really ever know when they're gonna hit us, but things that are called MOTA issues. These are situations that happened to us a while ago, and so there are memories that are stored in the ex-conscious or unconscious area, so lower in the iceberg. But something today reminds us or triggers us from that memory back then that was a really negative emotional trauma. And so now, that person, place, or situation standing in front of you today, you're not just reacting to them, you're reacting to something that happened 10 years ago, and they're the person that gets, like, emotionally, this new trigger or something brings us 0 to 100 very quickly because we had in our past a very negative emotional experience with it. And so, an example might be, you know, if you were dating, like had a very long-term relationship and that person was just bad at communicating plans with you. And so every time you're just like, dude, it's Friday, come on, like, should we try to do this or that? And then all of a sudden, like the weekend went past, you never wound up doing anything. And this went on and on for years and it just drove you nuts, but whatever. You're over that person, now you're on to the next relationship. Things are going well, like they're very good at making plans, but then one weekend, they're off their game, like the plans just don't happen, and there's really awful and terrible communication. Well, it's not just like this one time this person did that. It's now bringing up all these memories from like the previous relationship and the previous stuff. When people talk about baggage, this is what that is. There are things that happened in the past that are pretty negative emotional experiences, and today, a smaller trigger or something could make us emotionally react in a very good way. And so the essence of us getting into life, and when we're talking in here as far as training, whether you're doing tries or just getting here to get a good workout, I mean, it is a physical head-to-head competition. I am biking for a long period of time, I am running, I am swimming, like that is physically exhausting. There comes a point where our physical energy just seems to has a limit almost. And at some point, it's our mental ability to push for that last extra mile or to give it that last kick at the end. Or if you have a mistake in your race, all of a sudden you see somebody like flying by you that you weren't anticipating, or your race strategy and plan, things just aren't clicking that day, there are mistakes, your workout doesn't feel good. Those mistakes and errors are so much more difficult to rebound from when our brain is like not in a good spot. All of the dots are there, defenses are broken down, we're now losing attention, not getting sleep, not going to do super, super well. So that's why we always talk about like, hey, let's figure out ways to clear your mind. That will then keep those psychological defenses intact, the 90% staying down unless you want to grab it up. You're able to get through your workouts, get through work, deal with the stressors and things that come on in your day because your brain is rested. Just like if you ever taper or rest before a race, so your muscles aren't in good shape. Well, it's kind of like tapering and resting your brain so that it can deal with the situations of life. So, 5-step process, but I have to warn you, you're going to have half of these things, you're going to have to kind of figure it out how this works for you. The last one you already know, which is performance, so whether it's cycling or whether it's at work or whether it's in your roles as a husband, wife, mom, dad, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that is, like you know how to do that. You're performing. We got to get through the top 4. And so we need to figure out how do we clear out the dots. Well, before we're able to do anything with them, we have to know what they are. And so you need to figure out for you, in this busy life where screens are in our faces all the time, we're constantly connected to people, how do you become aware of what your dots are? What are those 5 or 10 minutes a couple times a week that you can just take for you, where you can disconnect from your phone, disconnect from music, disconnect from others, and just look inward? What are some of the things that are stressing me out right now? Were there thoughts that throughout the week kind of popped into my head in one environment that was totally unrelated to what I was doing? Because if that happens, that's your brain's way of giving you a little, hey, think about me, I'm not over this. And so we need to figure out, how do you become aware of your dots? Is it helpful for you to write them down? I've worked with an athlete that like looked at me and she's like, one of my biggest dots is remembering what my dots are. I was like, great. How about we write down the dots then? Like, problem solved. Now you don't have to remember. Keep a little notepad on your phone and like, dot, problem solved. And so how do you become aware of your dots? What does that look like? And when are those times throughout a week that you can do that? And so we're going to do a little sports psychology test next. There are people on here throwing around basketballs. The only rule, the only guideline is that you have to be completely quiet. And we're going to see who gets the right answer. There are 2 teams, team wearing white t-shirts and a team wearing black t-shirts. I want you guys to count the amount of passes the team wearing the white t-shirt makes amongst themselves. And like chest passes, bounce passes, that counts. I've been asked that before. And so team in white, we'll see if we can get this right. You guys ready? All right. How many people got 11? 12? 13? 14? 15? How many people saw the gorilla? Okay. How many people that saw the gorilla never saw this before? So you never saw it before? It's always like there's like one that like person that's really aware.
But that's why I missed a couple passes.
It's like not the whole situation thing, but I totally missed the passes. So there were 14 passes. I will replay the tape to prove to you. And when I say like there's a monkey, I don't just mean like a monkey. I mean there's like a 6-foot person dressed in a monkey standing in the middle, beating his chest and walking away. And so I will, as you see, I will not switch the slides. It's the same thing. I'm just replaying it. 14 passes were correct.
Well, I thought there was an extra black person that came through. Like,
Yep, you would be correct about that.
that was
There you go. Right in the middle. Okay. Blocks away. Same tape, same film, same thing. And so, is this a serious like sports psychology validated measure? No, absolutely not. This is literally me proving a point of like, hey, when I'm standing up here and I'm like, guys, really become aware. I mean it. Because sometimes, especially when we throw a little bit of competition in the mix of who's going to get it right, we feel like we are paying attention to the things that we need to pay attention to. We are on top of the things that we're told by our bosses, our spouses, our kids' teachers that we need to pay attention to and get done. We think we got it, and then we miss something. It's obvious. As a 6-foot man in a gorilla beating his chest. And so it's really like, I tell you to like take a minute, how do you become aware of your dots and to take that time a couple times a week? I really mean it, because it's usually those like big gorilla things that we kind of miss, or we're just like, don't really want to deal with it, and so we just pretend it doesn't exist. And so become aware, because once you become aware, you need to process the dots. And so process, find your people, talk to your people. Sometimes we can do absolutely nothing about the dot. We can't change the fact that our boss is this person, or they're making these demands, or training is going this way, or our coach is giving us like these workouts leading up to a race. Can't control it. But sometimes that process of literally emotionally vomiting and just complaining about it or venting, identifying how you feel about it, what your thoughts are, what your opinions are, it takes a dot that maybe was this big and just goes, makes it a bit smaller. And so if you've ever like had a situation at work that something was really frustrating and you connected with a coworker over lunch about it, you're just like, oh, I can't believe this happened, our boss is just ridiculous. And then on the way home, you connect with one of your other friends over the phone, and it's like, oh my gosh, you would not believe my boss. Like you run through the whole thing, and then you get home and your spouse is like, hey, how was your day? And you're like, honestly, I'm over it. Like I just don't even want to talk about it anymore. On to tomorrow. Because you talked about it. You emotionally decharged it. And so problem solving, maybe there are some things that you can do in the situation, and bouncing ideas with another person is very helpful. 2 brains are better than 1. But ultimately, you need to find your people and talk about your stuff. Journaling is also a really good way of doing this, because ultimately you're identifying how you feel about a situation, what you think about it, what your opinions are. This process of processing is very, very, very important of getting rid of the dots. So we become aware of what our dots are, we find our people, who those individuals are that we're comfortable with, we talk about it, and then at times we need to take a step back. Because sometimes we get so tunnel visioned into our own existence and reality, like March 20, whatever day it is, 2017, in my world, Emmaus, Pennsylvania, right here, right now. Like these dots seem huge. When we take a step back, it's like, this dot literally isn't even going to exist in my world in a week from now. Or this dot, maybe I had one a couple years ago that was similar to this one, and so I got through that one. I could probably get through this one now. Maybe even use some of the same strategies to get through this one. So this is ultimately putting things into perspective. Sometimes things seem like a huge deal. When we take a step back, they're not that big of a deal. And so what helps you put things into perspective? I work with an athlete that loves hiking. To him, going out, hiking in the woods, being around big trees helps him like physically put things into perspective. He feels smaller. I have another athlete who loves listening to music. Another one that is a Division I football player who is into wood whittling. He's from like this in Michigan, somewhere up where there's all woods, and so him and his dad used to carve wood when he was younger. And so now every day after practice or a workout, he will sit on the deck of his apartment for like 5, 10, 20 minutes and just carves wood. Helps him take a step back and be like, man, maybe today was a rough practice, but like It was just one practice, it was just one day, I have another shot at it tomorrow. It just helps him take that step back. And so what is this activity for you? How do you take a step back? And then ultimately, we have to integrate the dots. We are not computers, and so we cannot permanently delete experiences, memories, things that people have said to us. We don't have that. That's why the words that we choose to say to people are so important, because we can't take them back. Those people are always going to remember them. But if we can somehow figure out a way to change the perspective or shift our view on it ever so slightly, we're able to sync the dot a lot better. Because whenever we think about the dot, it's not going to be that very strong emotional reaction. We're able to keep it into that ex-conscious area, the little cream of the Oreo. And so in processing or talking with people, sometimes this happens at the same time, which is yet another reason why processing is so important. The best example I have of this, and I share this with everybody, is I worked with an athlete once, and so Pennsylvania wrestling is a huge deal. We see a ton of wrestlers at Mighty the Athletes. We're also pretty close to like Phillipsburg in New Jersey, close enough that they come. And so working with the kid, I was on one of the high school teams, one of the more competitive programs, and he, as a freshman at his weight class, was going to be wrestling varsity, which was a huge deal. He was like so pumped about it. He finds out that for his first match of his high school career, as a freshman, wrestling varsity, he is wrestling the defending state champion, who also happened to be a senior. And so this kid, I know, of course, right? Like, kid, Disney, thank you, right? And so he was like, you know what? I'm not going in there today expecting to win. This kid, defending state champion, he's got 3 years, I'm not winning today. I just don't want to get pinned. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to fight and I'm going to last throughout this match. I'm not going to get pinned. And so the match starts. The freshman drives super hard in the senior's legs, like throws this kid off balance, throws him out of bounds, surprises. I'm pretty sure he surprised himself, in addition to like everybody there that day, that he actually moved this kid. And so they reset. What do you think happens to this freshman within the next 30 seconds? Yeah.
He gets unlimitedly pounded.
Yes, he does. Flat on his back, he totally gets pinned, like next 30 seconds, just bug on drug, down. And so, holds it together, makes it into the locker room, and is just devastated. Crying, losing it, just was so bummed. And so his coach came down there, sees this kid like the ugly cry, the snot cry, you know it's bad when there's like things are leaking now. And so he comes in and he's like, dude, like what's so wrong? And the freshman was like, I failed. I totally failed. All I wanted to do was to go in there, not get pinned. I knew I wasn't going to beat him. I couldn't even last 3 minutes. I suck at wrestling. I can't cut it in high school. But like, just, his coach is like, whoa, buddy. That's not the match that I saw. Because what you were able to do out there was you were able to drive on the senior. You like attacked him like his lower half so hard, threw him off outside of bounds. You continue to practice that and your transition out of that. If you can do that to him, he's the best kid you're facing all year. He's the defending state champion. No one's as good as him. If you can do that to him, you keep working on that, transition out of it, you're going to have a really good season. So even though in this kid's mind it was this absolutely awful failing experience, he talked to his coach, it was like, yeah, so I lost today, I didn't reach my goal, but I learned that I might actually have a pretty decent season if I keep practicing that. And so, little shift of a perspective, which helps move it from up here, where it's still bothering us, to down into that middle of the Oreo area. So when he thinks about it, he can think about it, and then put it back away without throwing himself off emotionally. And so that's why we always talk about, clear mind, better performance. When you're able to clear out those dots from that box, as the stressors come in, you're going through, wherever they are, talking about them, putting them into perspective, sinking the dots, you're able to then have so much more energy, so much more of the positive qualities that make each and every one of us unique. They have much more room to grow. That ability to reach down and remember all those athletic things and things from work that you need to know, our brain's ability to access that happens so much easier when we're not totally bogged down by that. And so that's why we always say, clear mind, better performance. It's a way to really clear out our minds of that. And so that is what I have for you guys tonight as far as how the mind works. And like I said, with the company Minded Athlete. And so I wanted to open this up now to you guys. If you had any questions, either about what we talked about tonight or some other things, sport psychology or sport performance related. Yeah.
Thanks. So you described, I think, kind of a systematic process there.
Mm-hmm.
How would you compare that to something maybe a little bit more less systematic, like meditation?
Meditation is really good because it helps us like recharge in a different way. Ultimately, the whole point is we need to be aware of what our stressors are and get rid of them. And if through meditation you're able to like reflect on those things and kind of process it through the act of meditation, because some people do that. Like that's kind of their disconnect. Awesome. But if you're just meditating to kind of help relax and calm down and clear just your sensory experience and use it for the relaxation side, there's still those dots in there somewhere, and so it's doing both. And so in addition to meditating, like who is that person that you talk to on the phone, or and so it's still, and maybe through meditation it helps you become aware of what your dots are, and so you can integrate meditation into it. You can do 2 different types of it, but it's ultimately like the steps are there just to put a framework in it, but ultimately you just gotta talk about your stuff. And so it's, but yes, meditation is amazing because ultimately it's recharging your batteries. Like just like this, I mean, I'm at 72%. This isn't gonna last until tomorrow. I'm gonna have to plug this in. So do we. And meditation is a really, really great way of kind of recharging our batteries. It's a really great way.
And that could be your method of stepping back to.
Oh, absolutely. Meditating, some people are like praying, that's their thing, yoga is their thing. So it all goes in together. Yes.
So let's say you have like a past experience that was like a negative experience. Do you find it meaningful or useful to go back and try to like resolve it now with new like the techniques that you didn't have back then? Do you think it's like a needed thing to work through? So that you prevent. So like for example, let's say you previously were very anxious, or when you were in high school you had some unresolved feelings about performance or things that happened, and those are your those are things in your background, like those lower levels of the iceberg, if you will. Do you think it's important to like try to resolve those past negative feelings about that moving forward, so to prevent those types of things from coming back?
And so as far as the things that happened in our past and how they impact us today, we have to be aware of it. And so how you then choose to navigate it from there, maybe it's like every time I find myself in this situation, I always like have a panic attack or this bad thing happens, and I know that it's from this thing that happened in high school, or that this is a trigger situation for me. So being aware of what our trigger situations are, whether it's something that happened in high school or college or last week, being aware of what they are can be very helpful. If it is something, like for instance, I have a swimmer who, she was swimming the mile and got a panic attack in the middle of a race. She had to get out of the water, and it was the most mortifying, embarrassing, awful experience for her, and it happened a couple months ago. She can compete in any other event. She tries to swim a 500 or 1,000, she has to get out of the water. And so her negative emotional event was that day. Now she cannot swim a mile even in practice without and so what we do is we help her, or I've helped her visualize, what was that negative experience. Her way of working with it is, learning some relaxation techniques and visually, mentally putting herself there and working through it to help her gain the confidence to now do it at practice. To then gain the confidence to do it at practice while managing some of the, because even if we're imagining it or we're visualizing it, it's going to get that physical arousal and that emotional a little bit. And so she'll start implementing the strategies that she knows now to help decrease some of that arousal, which then helps her gain the confidence that when she's working up to it. And so in that sense, if it is something that's like a habitual thing and it does happen in certain situations, you can totally work on, implementing coping skills and visualizing it, or even getting close to actively doing it in person, but while showing and proving to yourself that, hey, I'm in control of this situation. Even though this happened before and I felt out of control, I now have the skills and the knowledge and things that I can control it now. And so should this situation arise in a race, in the practice, in something, I've visualized it, I've worked on it in practice, I have these skills that now, should it crank up, I can crank it back down. And so it's being aware of what those things are, and if it is taking those extra steps of beyond just simply being aware that, hey, in this situation, it typically causes me a little bit more anxiety or a little bit more X, Y, or Z than any other situation or any other kind of race trigger. The knowledge is good, but then also you want to kind of practice it as well. It can be really helpful in just building your confidence that if you're ever in that situation again, you can crank it back down. Is that helpful? Yeah.
How do you apply some of these techniques on the fly? And what I mean is, sometimes there'll be a wrench thrown into something during a race, you know, something comes up that you didn't expect, and then the negative self-talk comes in. You're not really going back because it's something brand new, but like, how do you, on the fly, just start to...
Start kind of doing it. And so the first starts just with kind of practicing and learning for you how you de-escalate. Is it through breathing? Is it, and so it's kind of learning some strategies to kind of deal and cope with it. But ultimately, when it then comes time to race day, or it comes time to do stuff, even just getting through your day, at that point it's emotional energy management. And so we all have physical energy, mental energy, and emotional energy. So physical energy, we get it. Like before a workout, we're less tired than at the end, or more tired. Well, emotionally, we all have a certain amount of energy to emotionally deal with and handle the stressors that come our way throughout a day. Those wrench-like situations in the middle of a race you were not anticipating, or even in the middle of a work day, that phone call you get at like 4:45, and you're like, serious? Emotional energy is something that proactively and constantly we can be working on. And so I have kind of like 3 visuals for it. And so I can't choose my favorite, so I just use all 3 because I think everybody kind of connects to each and every one of them. And so emotional energy is our capacity to emotionally handle and deal with and tolerate all of the things that come up. My emotional energy is like the water in this bottle, and it's really, really full. And as those situations come, and it's like, ooh, a little bit of emotional energy there, ooh, phone call from my boss, and ooh, really weird text message from the person I'm dating, and ooh, something else that happens. If my bottle was already full at the beginning and I'm pouring it out throughout the day, that's good. I'm still being able to hydrate, like I still got room to spare. If I started off a race or I started something and my emotional energy is there and now I'm pouring it out throughout the day, I'm not going to have very much to deal with it. And so one kind of second analogy, grades, 90 to 100, A, you guys are kids, I'm sure like A's, B's, those are the things like we strive for. So like 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 90 is B, 70 to 80 is a little rough. Starting to get a little bit more challenging. Below 70, kind of in the danger zone a little bit. And we all have a tipping point. We all have a tipping point where it's like, you go through all these things at work, you go through all these things at training, and then you get home, and like someone looks at you sideways, and you're like, you know, I can't, you know, and it's a shame, because normally at the end of the day, when we're with the people we like the most, we have the lowest emotional energy, because it's after 8 hours of work or after training, and so we're typically the worst to the people we like the best. And so to help in those wrench-like situations, it's managing our emotional energy. Third analogy, piggy bank. And so we constantly have people and situations and things we have to deal with that are taking away our emotional energy throughout a day. Emotional energy vampires, if you will. Those people that after 5 minutes of talking to them, you're kind of exhausted. Or a certain project at work, or certain training workouts, or certain just days of the week that drain you more than others. And so how are you making deposits to that piggy bank to fill up your emotional energy? Being well rested and being well fed really help. But who are the people that are really positive to you, that after you hang out with them you feel energized? What are those activities or things that you enjoy that help make deposits and fill up your emotional energy, so that when you're starting a race or starting a big project at work, if you're starting, I'm telling you what, if I'm watching, or if I go to like a game and I see one of my athletes and I'm like, how are you doing? And they're like, 90, great. And then maybe like there's someone else, they're like, I'm at an 85. I don't care if that person at 85 is the best swimmer in that entire pool. I'm not betting on them. I'm betting on the person that's a 90 or a 95. Because as we go through things and we have situations that we can't necessarily control, and the stressors and the wrenches come in, if I'm starting off at a higher emotional energy level, I have a lot more to give before I get into the danger zone. I can emotionally navigate and push out those negative thoughts a lot easier at a 95 than I can at a 75. And so it's being aware of filling it up and then going in to a race at a higher level of emotional energy in addition to that physical energy. And so it's emotional energy management. Yes.
What about pre-race nerves? Like you prepared, you trained, you've done your program, but you still have those pre-race nerves.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do either right before a race to calm those nerves that you're really on?
Yeah. And so when we get anxious, our nervous system is doing crazy things. Our sympathetic nervous system just shoots off the chart, and so it sends us into fight or flight. And so our stomach, some people get like weird bellies before a race, right? Like sometimes people actually get sick. Or we just lose our appetite. Some people get sweaty hands, lead feet, we shake a little, our heart rate goes. We're going into an evolutionary response of fight or flight. We don't have like lions and tigers, but we have, hey, I've trained for this for a super long time and I'm really freaking nervous about it now. And so you gotta attack it from two angles. We have the physical part of anxiety, and we have the mental part of anxiety. The physical part, you have to control your breathing. We cannot directly control a lot of things that are going on in here. Like I cannot open my chest up and like tell my heart to slow down and it would actually work. Like that's not a thing. However, if I wanted to, I could stand up here and hyperventilate to the point that I would make my heart rate skyrocket. Or we could all here and have a nice exercise and holding our breath until we pass out, which would be stupid, but we could because we control it. We cannot control some of the other things that just take off when we go into fight or flight. And so, first and foremost, you need to drop down your rate of respiration. Because when we start to get nervous, our heart rate goes up, our respiration rate goes up, and we also take very shallow breaths. You know, like kind of like breathe to here. And so we're not fueling and we're not doing the right things to help engage the side of our nervous system responsible for taking the side that's gone crazy into fight or flight and balancing it out. We have to engage the relaxing side to make it more even because they cannot both be engaged at the same time. And so focusing on your breathing is something very, very, very easy to do. Now, you can look up in different books, different websites. There is not one way that everybody teaches people to breathe. I'm going to share with you the way that I think is helpful, but if there is a way that ultimately it's just slowing it down. And so the pattern that I think is really easy is a 4-1-4-1 pattern, where you take a slow, deep breath for a slow count of 4, filling up your entire chest with air through your nose. And then you pause for 1 at the top, release that oxygen then through your mouth for the same very slow count of 4, taking that entire time to slowly release that air. Pause for 1 at the bottom, and then rinse and repeat. 4-1, 4-1, nose, mouth, nose, mouth. The reason that this kind of breathing is helpful, not only are you dropping the rate of respiration down to like you're resting, like if you're asleep at night, but who here has ever been to Disney World and could tell me what a fast pass does? Anybody? Yeah? What's a fast pass? Why do I want one?
Get you to the front of the line.
Heck yeah, it does. So, if we breathe through our nose, we have a bunch of little capillaries in here, which fast pass that oxygen very quickly and efficiently to where it needs to go to show up in our heart in the form of oxygenated blood. So our heart that has started to freak out is able to calm down. And so controlling your breathing will help that physiological with anxiety. And then as far as like training and all this different kind of stuff, so let's talk about anxiety, we have to define it. Anxiety, ready for the fill in the blank? Anxiety is fear of the unknown, right? It's fear of the unknown. Why am I anxious about a race? Because I don't know how I'm going to do. Was my training good enough? Am I rested enough? Did I fuel well enough? Am I hydrated enough? I don't know about this relationship or project at work. I mean, we have unknowns in literally every area of life. We don't like that. Unknowns which does not sit well with us. And so thinking of days of competing, how we can kind of manage some of that, are there opportunities for you to make things known about that day? And so a great example of athletes that do this, who here watched the Super Bowl this year? like all of America, mostly, right? I heard you guys had a party here. And so how many, so they're always at a stadium that's like predetermined, has nothing to do with people competing. How long in advance or how far in advance do the athletes competing in the Super Bowl show up? Do you know?
At least 68.
At least 6 to 8 days?
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep, you are correct. It is 7. They show up a week in advance. And so the reason they do this is to make the unknowns, like one of the reasons is to help make some of the unknowns known. So the day that they show up and it's like the big game, those athletes know exactly where to park. They know exactly which door to go in. They know where their equipment is. They know where the bathroom is. They will even pump in loud, like fan crowd cheering music throughout their practices, so they know what it sounds like to call and run plays in that stadium at that level of volume. And so that they are the most prepared that they can be. And so if there are things about a race that you can make known, and so whether it's learning some details about the course, learning how far in advance it is to get there, all of those things, use Google, see if there's things about the experience you can make known. Ask people that have competed in that race before if there's any tidbits about that particular race or track or parking or making the unknowns known. And then it's focusing on the stuff you do know about your prep and competition. And so is it like, I know my fuel is good, I'm not trying to eat new things the day of competition, like I know it works for me, I know my bag is packed, I know I've had this many miles of training, I know that I've been training for this race for X amount of months, I know I put in this many hours, I know I've been doing this. And so it's constantly going through your head and rehearsing those things that you do know, rather than focusing on all of the unknowns that inevitably will be there because we cannot predict the future. And so it's focusing on those knowns that you do have in addition to making some of those things, if you can, know about the experience. And be. The 1-2 punch, here and here. That's what you gotta think about. You know? What? Try. Thank you. Any other questions or things that
I just have a thought about all the red dots in the preconscious plot.
Yes.
When you talked about them, you kind of said things about events that happened in the past and things that might be happening in the future. Is there a way that, and I'm thinking there is a way that you can prevent more of those dots getting into that box by living in the moment?
Yes.
And not, and regardless of what you're doing, if you're doing dishes or you're cleaning up dog poop or whatever it is,
yes.
You live in the moment and
yes.
you try not to think about,
yep.
everything.
Oh yeah. I was even having a conversation with a gymnast today and I was like, dude, you are stressing out about August. You're aware it's not even April, right? Like, there are times that we are sitting in our own house and we're like, what if, and then, and we are up to here. And we haven't even left our couch. And so sometimes we are so forward-focused or so backwards-focused that we're not even aware of what's going on. And so really, I think an easy way to remember to kind of is come back to your senses. We got 5 of them, right? Sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. If you check in with your 5 senses and challenge yourself to engage each of those while breathing, you're going to be able to bring that like head that's floated 6 months into the future back down. And so it's like, what do I see right now? How many people, 1, 2, 3, 4, with blue shirts, 5, 6, there's a blue wall, there's a white wall, there's these really awesome little Christmas lights that are adorable. And the TRX, and like, so what am I seeing in my current environment? What am I hearing? Take a deep breath, which you should be already doing anyway. In the nose, out the mouth. And so what do I smell? Put your hands on